on this in a minute. We're a little bit nervous and we're a tiny bit early, but we're gonna, we are going to get started. While everyone is sort of trickling in, I'm gonna remember how to do this because
It's because it's been
long.
I'm so excited.
Let's see if I properly did that. Wait, let's see. Maybe not.
Hi.
Yay! Hi.
How are you? Okay, wait. Y'all did it right, but wait, let me make sure that we're on me too. All right, share this live video with others so they can watch too. Let's see.
And we haven't
Sorry.
done it in so long.
It's been so long. We were like, how did we do this again?
And Instagram always is changing things.
I know, it's always like a little different.
Every time. It's never the same.
Oh, right.
How
Thank y'all
are
for
you?
having me. It's so good to see y'all. It's been a minute.
It's so good to see you.
It has been a minute. Oh, look at that beautiful bookcase behind you.
Thank you. Yes, although I was laughing, I was like, this is the wedding veil, not the books that we're talking about tonight. But that's okay.
But another great book of yours, so that's fair.
But it's so pretty.
We have the two that we're discussing. So
yay!
we can
I know, and y'all are doing that awesome giveaway. I'm so excited about that.
We are too. I can't
I'm so
believe we didn't have
excited.
a chance to talk to you about this one.
I know.
Which I think we should start with because we are summer camp girlies. And so this one, like
this book,
I met my husband at overnight camp.
No.
Yes.
So like this is, and my kids go to the same overnight camp that we met at. So it's like we're on the marriage pagoda.
It's very like this book was like very, very nostalgic for both of us.
Oh,
because we both spent our life at camp.
That is amazing. I did not even know that, and now I'm so glad that I do. And I think like people who met their spouses at camp get like really gold stars with this book because I mean, y'all are like winning camps, right?
Yeah, we are. It just was like so nostalgic to like read it, and you're like, I remember those feelings I had when I was 17.
Yes,
it was
right?
Yeah. Did you go to overnight camp?
Oh yeah, for sure. Okay. And so that was a huge inspiration for this book for me, as I loved camp and was such a camp girl. And believe it or not, I mean, the book came out in 2023, but I wrote it in 2020. So I wrote it like, yeah. And I wrote, so it was like coming off of the wedding veil. Speaking of the wedding veil, you know, I had been like in the house for 6 months doing just like loads of research. And it was during that time when I think we were just all really sick of like, oh my gosh, like we thought this was going to be 2 weeks and we're like 6 months in. And I was like, I just want to take my readers somewhere really fun and free and open, and where can I take them? And the first place that came to mind was summer camp. And so I was like, all right, well, that's what we're going to do. And right after that, we went to family camp. So I guess I started the book around like July. We went to family camp because my son couldn't go to camp that year, obviously. But they were able to do like a socially distanced, like everybody had their own cabin kind of family camp. And oh my gosh, it gave me so much inspiration. It was so fun to just like be back in camp. And although it was really funny because I remember my husband being like, you want to do family camp? Like there's no air conditioning. It's camp food. Like there are mosquitoes. Like, are you sure about this? And I was like, no, Camp Kristy's so fun. You don't know her, but she's so fun, you know, and you just go right back to like being 10 years old and like the world is yours, you know, it's the best.
Did your husband go to camp?
Yes, but not like, he went when he was younger. I went like forever, you know, until I could not go anymore.
Okay. Because a lot of times I think like, you know, it's very interesting because for us, you know, there's two camps, so to speak. It's like the parents that have gone to camp their entire life that are like, my kids have to go to camp. And then there's the people that really didn't go, and then they don't understand. Like parents are saying, like, why are you sending your child away for so long? And it's like, no, you don't understand.
You're not
It's because
sending
I
them
love
away.
them and I'm sending them.
Right.
Exactly. No, and it's like, it's a sacrifice. Like, I look back, I mean, now I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I did not even realize, like, it is a sacrifice to send your kids to camp. I mean, you
It
could
is.
go on like a super great family vacation. Like, you
Yes.
could do a lot. You could do a house project. Like, you could do a lot of
I
things with that
joke
money.
that
So,
I could have like a second home on a beach somewhere
yes,
instead of sending them
yes,
to camp.
Yeah, and
no,
I
for
have three
sure.
kids, so it's
Woo, woo. Yeah.
you know,
So it
it's
is.
not
Yeah.
cheap.
It's not something that you are like, you're not like sending your kids away. You're giving them this whole new life experience that they will never get to have. And I think, I mean, I don't know if you guys feel this way, but I can look back on that time. And so I'm with you, like writing this book was so nostalgic for me. And it really made me remember those days of like, camp was the first place that you ever had freedom in your life
Yes.
because you were like confined and you were safe, but you didn't really know. I mean, you just felt like the world was your oyster, where at home you had all these like rules and confinement, and at camp you could just kind of do whatever you wanted to. So,
And I
I mean,
think it's
you know what I mean?
such a good learning experience for
Yeah,
kids to actually have to deal with problems themselves
yep,
and settle it themselves,
yep,
because it is the real world, and mom and dad aren't there to solve the problems. You
yep,
have to learn to get along with other
yep,
people. You have to learn to express yourself, and there's going to be arguments, and you might not love everybody, but you have to learn to get along. And
yeah,
it just makes kids into, I feel like, such more responsible, independent
yes.
people.
Well, and you have to learn how to like insert yourself into groups of people that you don't know, that you're
Mm-hmm.
not comfortable with. And like, guess what? That is my whole life now. Like, half of my life is like being on tour, walking in a room, not knowing anyone. Like,
Yeah.
hello. I mean, it really is. It's like it's training for the rest of your life, because you're exactly right. You have to learn how to solve problems without your mom there. And I mean, yeah, you have counselors and yeah, there's supervisors, but you're not going to run to them like every second and be like,
Right.
well, so and so wasn't nice to me, or they're leaving me out of the game. Like, you just work it out, and it's amazing.
Right. Right. And at least at our camp, those counselors are like 4 years older than me.
Right. Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
they're not
They're
really
like,
going to help much anyway.
they're like 18, and they're like, yeah, good luck.
Like they have just as much drama as the kids. They're like, I don't know, figure it out. And the kids do. They figure it all out.
Figure it out.
But what I
It's
loved
great.
about the Summer of Songbirds is those friendships that you make at camp really do become lifelong friendships.
Yeah.
Like the case in this book, which I realized we didn't actually do a synopsis for people that don't know. So do you want to tell us what the book is about?
Sorry, guys. We like camp. That was the headline. Yes. So, the Summer of Songbirds is about Daphne Lanier and Mary Stewart, who are three best friends who met when they were the Songbirds, the youngest campers at Camp Holly Springs. And they learn that June, who's also a protagonist in this book, who happens to be Daphne's aunt, has been kind of holding the camp together with like scotch tape and prayers. Like, it's not going great in the post-pandemic world. And so they decide that they are going to band together and try to save the place that meant the most to them, to keep her from having to sell it, for the land. But in the meantime, Daphne is an attorney, and she finds out that Lanier's fiance, Lanier's fiance, Mary Stewart. No, Lanier's fiance, Bryce, has done something highly illegal, and she has to decide whether she is going to tell her best friend the truth, or if she's going and get disbarred, or if she's going to let her marry this man and, not knowing this big thing about him. But Lanier has a secret too. And when Lanier's secret comes to light, it changes everything. So it's kind of like, a grown-up friend camp drama.
Okay. Yep. That's a good explanation.
Which
Can you hear the phone ringing?
Uh-huh. I'm impressed you have a landline, actually.
she does, and it talks to her.
Rings. It never rings. But everything in my house like speaks to me and sings songs and
Sing
does all the
songs.
things.
Her laundry plays like an entire second act of like
a
a
symphony.
musical, like a symphony.
Very nice, though. It's very nice. Oh, thank you, Anissa. She said The Summer of Songbirds was such a great read.
It is
Oh,
a really
it
great
was,
read.
it was the book last summer that I just held onto, and I put it in my heart, and I was like, this book summarizes like my experience, my childhood, my growing up, and yeah.
No, it
And
was.
now it's new in paperback.
Oh, is the cover the same? Does it look exactly the same in
It is. The
paperback?
cover's the same. Yeah, we loved that cover so much.
I love this
Oh,
cover.
so
I'm gonna
good.
show everyone one more
Listen,
time.
Summer of Songbirds, if you have not read this book, this is, you must just go out and give yourself a weekend, because you will not put it down.
No.
Just like start it and then
I love it.
lock the door. And one of my favorite things in the book actually was the idea of the hard things.
Yeah.
And for people who haven't read it, they have this idea of doing each other's very hard things, which I can relate to with this one so much, because she will do my hard things, I will do her hard things, but I didn't have a word for it or a name.
It's not like
for
formalized.
it.
Like this is formalized.
Right, until I read it and I was like, oh, that's what we do. We do each other's hard things. So where did you come up with this idea?
Okay, so it was pretty organic actually, and I had already started the book. So this was not something that like it did not. I had written probably like a third of the book before I came up with this idea. So I had to let someone go, which I am very not good at and do not do unless it is like it's got to be. I mean, yeah. So I thought, okay, I'm really bad at things like this. Like, I don't want to do this. I hate like hurting anyone's feelings, even if it's necessary or warranted or whatever. But I thought, my brother-in-law is great at firing people. He's so good at it. So I called him and I was like, look, here's the situation. Here's what's going on. Here's what I have to do. And here's why I have to do it. And he like laid it out for me. He like gave me a script. He was like, this is what you do. He's like, you have to be very direct. He's like, don't like pussyfoot around at the beginning. He's like, say what you're here to do and then give your reason, like walked me through the whole thing. And I was like, yeah, he's so good at that. And I thought, wouldn't it be so great if he could just do it for me? Because he doesn't care at all. Like he does it all the time. That's like part of his job. And it doesn't faze him because he knows like onward and upward for both of us. Like it's fine. It's not a good fit. And so I said to my husband, like, wouldn't it be great if someone could do your hard things? And he was like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, because like there are things that like I think are really easy that like, a friend might think is really hard, and like the same, like vice versa, things that just don't bother you at all really bother someone else. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is going in the book. These women are going to do each other's hard things. And so it was really just out of like, man, I wish someone could do this stuff for me.
Well, it's a genius. It's a genius part of the book.
It is genius, and I loved it. I loved their relationship that they had with each other. It was such deep friendships and real friendships, and I love how they weren't catty.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that was an interesting thing to play with because I've written sisters a lot. And it's not that I haven't written friends before, I definitely have. But I think something that I really wanted to explore was, and you guys can probably relate to this. It's not that your friendships that you make as an adult are less than. They're certainly not. They're just different. And I think there are things that you can say to your childhood friends. There are ways that you can push your childhood friends. There are hard truths that you can really lay down to your childhood friends just in a way that you cannot do with your adult friends without ruining the relationship. And so I think I was kind of trying to test that line of like, how far can you push those friendships before you break them? And I think that's really what Daphne and Lanier kind of was to me. And people have asked me why Mary Stuart wasn't a point of view character. And for one thing, I had promised myself I was only going to have 2 points of view in this book. I had
Okay.
3, but 3 was better than 4, right?
Right.
Yes.
But I liked not knowing what she was thinking all the time, and I liked that she was kind of the voice of reason a little bit in this story. And I didn't think that we needed to be in her head to see that. Like, I didn't think that she had. I hate to say it, like, she didn't have enough to add to the story that we needed to be in her head, because she adds so much to the story. But I felt like she added what she needed to add without having to hear her thoughts
Yep.
behind it. She's
Yeah,
kind of
100%.
that, like, mediator.
100%.
Were any of these girls based on real life friendships?
Um, I didn't like consciously base them on so I have like 3 best friends from growing up, and we're still very tight, and we see each other as much as we can. We live in different places and all of that, but we all get together a few times a year. And I thought about those friendships a lot, because like I said, I mean, there is a level of being able to say, like, just the truth, to them that I would not do in other friendships in my life. And so I definitely did think about that. And I also think, I didn't say this in this book, it's actually a line from one of my other books, but Ansley in the Peachtree Bluff series says something to the effect of, like, there's something special about the people that you grew up with, who knew you before the world got its hands on you and told you who you were supposed to be. And I think that's what these women are for each other. Like, they knew each other before the world told them who they were supposed to be. And so together they just are absolutely authentically who they are. Um, and and so I think I thought a lot about those friendships that I had, that I still have, and how the dynamic is a little bit different, because there's no pretense with those relationships. It's just because they knew you when you were 4. Like,
Right.
sorry, like, you don't get to pretend like that's a thing,
Right. Right.
Right. Right.
Right. There's something about like bathing with someone when you were
Yeah,
4 that.
exactly. Exactly. Like, we have pictures, like, naked on the beach together. Like, you can't tell me that and think I'm going to believe it.
Right.
Right. But I love how you did that. You mentioned that you write sisters a lot, and we were actually talking about your books. And what's really interesting about your books is that you don't have a formula of the way that your books are going to go, other than the really strong interpersonal relationships that are in each of the books. But they're very different relationships. So I love how you use that, as opposed to all of these books are so different from each other.
Yep.
Well, thank you. I take that as a very high compliment.
Yep. They're really wonderful. And
so,
even
yeah,
with like a happier life, you see that, and they're so incredibly different. But like, it's those interpersonal relationships that I think hook us on this one too.
Yeah, because they're so realistic. They're just so realistic. And I love how you could do realistic between friends, between an aunt,
Between
and
those little old biddies from
oh,
the
I love them so much. I'm like, I want to be.
Okay, so I have to tell you the truth. I'm so glad that you brought them up, because I kind of had like an inkling of an idea for a happier life for like a long time, like years, like probably 4 or 5 years. And when the Dock House James, who are the 4 little ladies that you're talking about that become Keaton's besties, they're all like, in their 70s and 80s, and she's 33 or something. And they become her besties in this town. When they started taking shape, and then when Bowen and his son Anderson started taking shape, I was like,
I love
okay, I got to write it.
Anderson.
I love Anderson so much. The first scene that I wrote in this entire book was the one where Anderson comes to the house and tells her she has squirrels, and like, does she want him to take care of them with the pellet gun? And she's like, what is happening? Who is this person? And like she kind of thinks he's a ghost at first because she thinks the house is haunted. Like just the whole like it was like it like encapsulated everything in that whole book, and I was like, okay, I've got a story. There's a story here somewhere.
Which that I read it. First of all, I was laughing out loud.
Bad, yeah.
Okay, I can't tell you the number of times my husband kept coming in and saying, like, "What are you laughing about?" I'm like, "Go away! Like, leave me alone. I'm not." You can read it yourself. I'm not explaining the entire thing because I'm not doing it justice. Like, I just go away. I was like, the kids were like, let's just leave her alone.
This was your funniest book, I think. This one was really funny.
Oh,
it was really funny
because they're just everyone.
Because those kitties, I cannot. They were so funny, and the way that they were just hilarious, and they're so nosy, and like. But in such a way that I'm like, how come I don't have a bunch of 80-year-old ladies being my best friend?
Right.
They're so nosy and intrusive, and yet you want them in your life too.
Yes, I'm like, please, can you tell me what to do? Like, you're giving such good advice.
Because they're in her corner, so they're they're being, but they have her best interest at heart, and it's so. It's nothing but love.
Right. It's not in a judgmental way at all. It's in such a place of like love and support. I'm like, I need that. They're like old lady cheerleaders.
Well, they're judging her a little when she doesn't know how to cream butter.
So this whole part was really fascinating to me because I have this crazy Aunt Jan that everyone knows.
Okay.
And she's from Louisiana, and she's 80 years old, and she comes up here, and when she comes up here to visit, Lord help you, my husband has a panic attack in the kitchen. It is a full feast every single night with appetizers and tablescape and flower arranging and all the things. And it's like this lost art.
Yeah.
And I'm reading this book and I'm like connecting with these women because I'm like, they're like Aunt Jan. They like are trying to get her how to do all these things. Yeah. And I don't know if it's a Southern thing or if it's a generational thing, but like I feel like the dinner parties are gone. Nobody throws them anymore.
You know, you hit on something that like I didn't actually like set out meaning to explore in this book, but then I kind of did. And I think I've done it in some of my other books too, not really meaning to, but I definitely grew up with that, with like, you know, the parties and the use your crystal and use your fine china and, you know, the entertaining and all of those things that I love and like I respect them so much. And we still have parties and we do all that, but it's just in a different way. And there's this part of me that like kind of mourns for that. But then there's this other part of me that's like, I can't like write books and have a web show and be a mom and be a wife and have friends and have a life and go on tour and polish silver when I have friends over. Like I can't. I can't.
And have like a multiple course meal with like
with like homemade creamed butter.
Right. Like exactly. So I think that was something that like came out in this book that was like very personal to me, that is kind of that I think Keaton is kind of almost, it's like something that she missed that she never even knew she missed, whereas like I kind of know that I'm missing it.
We did it again. We didn't. Do you want to tell people a little bit?
We keep just jumping in.
Can you tell?
We have so much to talk about.
I know, and we don't want to keep you here all night. Will you tell people a little bit about Happier Life?
Yes. I love it. These are such good questions, though. That's so much more interesting than what's the book about. So, everyone's probably picked up on a little of it. But so, A Happier Life is about a woman named Keaton who has sort of Wiley Cash is an author friend of mine who I'm sure a lot of you have read and know, and he is wonderful. And he just did this amazing review for Our State Magazine of this book, and I haven't read it yet, but they called to fact check it. And he said that Keaton has something to the effect of like a comically tragic, like, you know, life falling apart situation that, you know, and I'm like, that's the best way to put it. It's comically tragic. Like her life falls apart, but it's kind of funny. So basically her life sort of falls apart, and she has to figure out what her next steps are. And at the same time, she knows that her grandparents passed away in an accident, but she does not know that her mom and her uncle never sold their childhood home in Beaufort, North Carolina, which of course she thinks is bananas because it's been sitting there for 40 years. And so for a lot of reasons that you learned in the book, they talk her into going to Beaufort to put this house on the market, something she does not want to do. But she has absolutely no idea what she's walking into. She thinks she's going into a basically empty house. This is going to be like turnkey. What she walks into is a time capsule of the night that her grandparents died. They literally walked out the door that August night in 1976. And for the very most part, no one has been back inside for 40 years. So 50 years, almost 50 years. So she, goes in this house and basically starts to realize that there's a lot of work to do, and as she's sort of uncovering the detritus of her grandparents' lives and meeting these women in Beaufort who are telling her all about these people that she never knew, she starts to realize that maybe the stories that she's been told about her grandparents aren't true, aren't reality. And then in the other point of view, we get to see Rebecca St. James, who you might have gathered from our previous conversation is really known as Beaufort's finest hostess. She loves to throw a party, and if you get a ticket to her summer supper, you are living right. I mean, that is, her thing. And she loves to take care of people, and she is facing a big problem this summer that the book takes place that she is trying to face. And her story starts in 1935 and ends on that fateful night in 1976 when we find out what happened to Rebecca and Townsend St. James. So there you go.
Done. Well, that was good. That was
great.
a good
Oh, good. Okay, thanks.
Wait, is it Beaufort or Beaufort? Because people kept correcting me when I said.
No.
Okay.
So it's Beaufort in North Carolina, and it's Beaufort in South Carolina. So this is Beaufort, North Carolina.
North Carolina.
Okay, so yeah, what inspired this story?
Yeah. So several different things. One being that I had a great aunt and great uncle that passed away in like kind of an unusual way that I will not tell because it kind of gives away part of the book. But before I was born, but it was something that I don't know, it always just interested me. Like it was a very like they were missing, and the way that they actually ended up being found was so bizarre. It was by like a psychic and a group of Boy Scouts, like this kind of convergence of these things that you could never, yes, things that you could never write in a book. Yeah, a psychic called my grandmother on the telephone after like weeks of them being missing and told her the latitude and longitude coordinates of where they were. And on the same day, there was a troop of Boy Scouts hiking in the woods, and they found them at the exact latitude and longitude coordinates.
That's insane.
How is that not a book? That is.
Right?
I feel like
because it's not believable though. Like if you read like as a real story, it's like, oh my God, that's nuts. But if you read that in a book, you'd be like, well, that's convenient. A psychic called them on the phone, right? I mean, it doesn't translate into real life. It would have been great, but that's one of the things that is hard, and that's why I think I've sat with this story for a long time. Is I think when you're writing a story that means something to you, the inclination is to put every real detail in there because you want to save it. And the reality is that our stories can be interesting, but our lives very seldom make interesting narrative arcs. And so that was something that I had to kind of like let go of when I was writing this book. But so there was that, and I had always wondered about that. And my grandmother was always good about like talking about it with me and answering my questions. And she made a random comment about their death, and then the next day their son, who is my mom's cousin, made another random comment about their death, and I had this moment of like, oh my gosh, like what if what happened to them wasn't what we thought? And so that was really when I was like, okay, I'm forging ahead with this book. But the other thing that really inspired the story is when I was like 10 years old, the house across the street from us sold to like my parents' like very best friends. And the outside had kind of been kept up, for like neighborhood appearances and things that you have to do, rules, all of that. But the inside had literally not been walked in 50 years. And so I was one of the first people to walk in that house after it had been closed up for 50 years. And it wasn't like it was closed up and empty. It was like they were around a Thanksgiving table, got in a fight, got up from the table, left, and no one ever came back.
Wow.
So like the table was set, the shoes were by the couch, the newspapers were open, the kids' toys were in their rooms. It was bananas. And again, at 10, I thought, well, this is weird. And I actually remember feeling really sad for like the baby dolls in the rooms and stuff that would be creepy now. But I didn't realize how bizarre it was until I'm looking back on it now. And I'm like, that is bizarre. But again, it was one of those things that I wrote this in my author's note. I had to downplay it a little bit. Like I had to downplay what we really saw and what really happened because in the first draft, both my agent and my editor were like, this is not believable. And I was like, but it's true. And they were like, but it's not, it doesn't, it's not believable. So you're going to have to tone it down.
Right. Which, that's crazy.
That is really crazy.
I can't even imagine.
No. So then, okay, so you talked about the outside of the house has to be kept up for like neighborhood aesthetics. So does that mean the tour that you're talking about I don't want to give too much away, but I think this is safe.
Yeah.
They're talking about like the historic homes tour. Does that really happen in this?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay. And so that was such a fun, like, connecting point. Well, and for one, like, I'm on the board of the Beaufort Historic Site that puts on the Old Homes Tour. So that was really fun.
So you're
Yes. And I have been well, I've done my 6 years and I'm on my 7th year of victory lap because they asked me if I could stay one more. So I'm very intimately, I have a lot of intimate knowledge of this tour. Our house has been on it a few times as well, but, I thought I wanted something that would connect like the past and the present. And I wanted something for Bex to be like working toward, in her chapters. But in reality, the Old Homes Tour started long before 1976. I think I wrote it in the book. I think it was like 1962 or 3. But so the actual tour has been going on much longer than in the book, but it is a real thing. And here's the crazy part. So I wrote this book. We thought it was going to come out in April. They decided to move it because my summer book last summer had been a good day, and so we decided to move it again. And the book releases on June 25th, which is the week of the Old Homes Tour. A complete coincidence.
No way.
And so my launch in Beaufort is going to be the Champagne Brunch, which is the closing event of the Old Homes Tour. It's my favorite event of the year in Beaufort, and I helped start it. So it's kind of a fun, like,
That's so much
awesome.
fun.
What a full circle moment.
That is so awesome.
I love it.
Really cool. I feel like I want to go to town to see these.
I know.
Y'all, come on. It's June 29th or June 30th, whatever the Sunday is. But yeah, I'm so excited about that. And I just thought that was like such a fun full circle moment. So yes, it's real. I think it brings in like 10,000 people or something insane to this tiny little town of ours. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Cool.
That's a ton of people. I'm thinking about when I went to Charleston and I toured all those like old homes when I was down there. That's what I'm picturing, like being able to walk into each of these homes, except I guess with modern touches.
But I mean, some and some not. I mean, there are some houses that are like very much, and like even mine. So our house was built in 1903. So it's one of the like old homes. It's actually newer because the original house burned down. But anything that you see in terms of like floors, moldings, mantles, doors, like everything on the exterior, everything is like absolutely the way it was when the house was built. So, and there are houses in town that truly like have not been touched. I mean, I say that obviously you have to have like a toilet that flushes and like a stove. I mean, if your house was built in 1735, like you've had to do something. But it people take it seriously. And I mean, we do have like a lot of, there are a lot of rules about what you can do to your house and all of that.
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah. Are there restrictions and stuff for what you're allowed to do to the outside of the house?
Oh yeah. And it's pretty serious. But I also feel like if you buy one of these houses, that's important to you. You know, like it's not, most people aren't like, oh, how fun. Let's restore a falling down house when we could just build something new. Let's have a 200-year-old house. That sounds like a great idea. So I think if you do that, then like it's important to you that, you are maintaining the integrity of the house the way it was.
So houses sign up to be on the tour, or are there certain houses that like you're on the tour every year, so if you sell your house is still going to be on the tour?
Man, I wish we could figure out how to do that.
It's
That
in
would
your
be
real
great.
estate clause.
Yeah. No, it's basically like, just going around and begging every year, please put your house on tour. And I get it because it's a lot of work to get your house ready to be on tour. It's and we do it twice a year. There's Old Homes Tour in the summer, and then there's Christmas Candlelight Tour,
Oh wow.
which is magic. Like the whole downtown is like candlelit with like everyone has luminaries. And so it's a nighttime tour, and it's just downstairs, so it's a little less work, than getting your whole house like ready for a tour. But in general, I mean, it's kind of a mix of like people who say like, okay, like I'm just finishing a renovation and I'd be happy to be on tour. I also think it's a huge fundraiser for the historic site. And so I think people want to be involved in it because they want to support the historic site in the town. And people are very generous to open their homes.
That's
It's
awesome.
very
That's it. And wait, are the dolphins real?
Oh,
Like you talk a
oh
few
yeah.
times about sitting that really the
Yeah.
dolphins are just like
And
jumping
it's
around.
like sometimes when I'm walking in the morning, there will be like a pod of them and they're with me like the whole walk. It's
Oh,
magical. And it never gets
How
old.
do I move?
Yeah, no.
I need to move.
I'm living in the
And
wrong
like
place.
I am living in the wrong place. I was
and
made to live in
the horses are they're wild horses on the island, like across from our house. And um they're so like they come out to feed every day, and it's hilarious because like people will come visit and they're so like on cue that people will be like, how do they know, like, hey, who brings the horses out? And I'm like, "No, they just live there, like they're wild horses, like, but they're so like picturesque that it really does look as though someone has like led them out to feed today.
That's
But they
really fun.
just it's amazing. It's amazing.
That's really fun. Megan wanted us to ask what your favorite part is about living in Beaufort.
Oh, gosh, that's hard. Well, so now that it's getting warm, I mean, just outside, just being on the boat, being in the water, being, hiking, like walking, just I don't know. But I also think just living in such a little like close-knit community is really fun, and just knowing that like at any moment you can like walk out your door and you can go for a little walk and you can talk to 20 people on their front porch, and it's just like a nice little community.
It sounds like
It
an
sounds
amazing place
idyllic.
to
I feel like
live.
I'm retiring.
People are like,
Um,
do not quit writing about Beaufort. Like, the book hasn't even come out yet.
I wanted to ask about the two covers. Okay.
Okay.
So your former books all had sort of realistic photos on the front.
Yep.
And this one is more cartoony, which I know is like a newer trend in publishing. But I'm wondering your thoughts on the cover. Did you design it? Are you happy with it? Like, what are your? Because it's a big switch. Like, what caused the switch?
It's a big switch. Okay, so um multiple things caused the switch. One being, you're right, it is kind of a newer trend in publishing. Um, Two, I got a new editor right around the time that we were picking covers for this book, and she's been in the business for a really long time, and she just has a really good like eye and insight for things. Um, we had gone through a lot of different cover variations for this book, and none of them were just really hitting. And it wasn't like me saying, I mean, we were all kind of like, it's just not it. It's just not it. And we don't really know what to do about it. And I think part of that is, I mean, this is my 11th novel, and there comes a point where you've had 10 covers with like some iteration of like a woman on a beach, right? I mean, like some iteration of that.
Right.
And it's great, but at some point it's like, okay, they all are starting to look alike a little bit,
Right.
And so we were like, I think our problem was we couldn't quite find something fresh. And for some reason, the Summer of Songbirds, I think because it had that very camp feel, like it felt fresh to us. Because really, we even like a book before that, we were kind of like, oh. But with the Summer of Songbirds, I felt like they nailed that cover. Like I actually sent them a magazine cover from Travel and Leisure, and it was like this woman stepping in this old timey swim lake, and I was like, I want the cover to feel like this, and I felt like they just totally nailed
They
that
did.
cover.
They nailed that cover.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it just was getting to the point that I was like, okay, we're sort of out of like fresh things to do, and this is really, I mean, it's a book about a house, right? I mean, and it's hard to get a picture of a house that doesn't look kind of cheesy, just honestly.
Right.
It can be done. People have done it very effectively, but we just weren't getting there. So she was like, let's just try it and see what happens. And I think the funny thing is, so if you look at a real picture of Beaufort, so like, you know, we were talking about where the horses are.
Yeah.
So like this island is like where the horses are. And then right across the way is like all the old downtown houses in Beaufort. And of course, I mean,
Okay.
these are a little bit more like stylized, you know, like the ones in Beaufort are definitely like 2 floors, like picket fence, black shutters, you know, these are a little more stylized, but it very much like captures the feel of what it is like to sit on the Rachel Carson Reserve and look back at Beaufort. And so um, I loved this like right away. I thought they did a great job, and I liked the purple. I thought the purple was pretty.
I
It
love
wasn't.
Love the purple,
I
like
love
those colors right here.
Yeah,
I love it.
I
I love
think
it.
they
It
did.
feels like the most perfect sunset. Like I just want
Yeah.
to be her.
I know.
Yeah.
I want to
Looking
be
at that
her.
sunset.
Okay, good. Me too. Me too. So I think they did an incredible job, and I'll be interested. So we're in working on covers for my next book right now, and so I'm interested to see like, are we going to stay here? But I think we probably will, because this is like definitely a book about a beach house. So
Right.
I think we'll, you know, I think we'll sort of stay in this vein. I hope, because I really like it, and I think it's fun and you know, fresh and just something a little different.
Can you tell us about that new project? Because I saw on Instagram that you just finished it. You talked
Okay.
about the spa. So can you tell
Yeah,
us a
I think
little
I can. I think I can. So I've changed the title like 62 times. So like every time I'm on something and I'm like, the title is going to be,
bit?
but I really do think this is going to be the title. I think it's going to be called Beach House Rules.
Okay.
And it is about a commune in coastal North Carolina. So basically, like a group of women who come together to raise their children under the same roof, which was
Oh
kind of
wow.
a big thing in the media last summer. But I'm not good at talking about this book yet, but I'll do my best. Okay, so there are 3 protagonists in this story. One is Alice, and she's the one who owns the beach house. And she has tragically lost 3 husbands, and so she is not currently married. She does not have children, and her niece basically has 3 little kids and is going through a divorce. And she's like, "Just come move in with me. Like, I'll help you. About, you know, this will be great." And it starts this kind of ripple effect where, like, you know, another mom moves in, and then there's another woman in town whose husband has been accused of wire fraud, and everything that she has is frozen. So like, she has no money, she has no house, she has no, because when something like that happens, like all of your stuff is
Right.
on lockdown and you can't get to it. And so they invite her to kind of come join in the fold too, obviously probably like pretty short term, but she doesn't even really know these women. So there's a lot at play here. Like, you know, is Alice really a shady character, or is she, you know, a philanthropist? Is Charlotte's husband guilty? Is he not? And then we get to see this whole thing unfolding through the eyes of Iris, who is the 14-year-old daughter, who is
I
like,
love
what
that.
has happened to my life? So I'm not going to talk about it, but there's a lot going on here, and there's also a sort of, I don't know exactly what you would say. I guess like a social media account. I think it's like an Instagram account called Juniper Shores Socialite, and the town is called Juniper Shores. And she is kind of the voice of the people in all of this. Like, she is the person saying, like, you know, she's the one that is letting you know what the town thinks about what's going
Okay.
on behind these walls,
I
what's
love
going
that.
on with all of these
Okay.
women. And what I think is interesting about it is they all come together in these very unique ways, multiple different times in the story. And I think what the story is really about, this is what we ask them, what's the story really about? But we think what the story is really about is how public perception is shaped. And so that is really the story. It is about like what people think versus what is reality, and how we can actually help control that narrative in some ways. And so that's sort of, anyway,
Huh.
I'm very excited about
I
it.
know, that sounds amazing.
Oh.
I want to read your writing from the point of view of a 14-year-old, because maybe it will help me with my
With your 14-year-old?
well,
She'll be almost 14 by then.
yeah, by then she'll be 13.
Yeah.
Yeah, my son will too. So there you go. I guess that's, I don't know. Yeah. So like Anderson in this book, you know, everyone's like, oh my gosh, that reminds me of Will. I'm like, does it?
He was just so cute. I wanted to I just want to squeeze him. I don't
I
know.
fell in love with him before I fell in love with his dad, for sure, while reading it.
Oh, for sure.
I know.
I needed them to be a family.
Yeah.
No, he reminded me of almost like how you fell in love with Renee Zellweger's kid. Like, a human head weighs 10 pounds. You remember?
Oh, yeah. Jerry Maguire.
Jerry Maguire.
And
he fell in love with her kid, but that's what I felt. I was like, oh, that's who he is. He's just.
That's totally. Well, no, and I mean, and it's so funny. Like, I just think he's so funny, and he's my son's dry humor for sure. Like,
no, he's great. He's great.
Is he based on your son?
I wouldn't say he's based on him, but there are definitely some strong influences there. You know?
They would be friends if they met in real life.
They would definitely be friends. Yeah, they would have all the same interests. No, but I mean, there were a lot of I mean, looking back, he's pretty much my son. Yeah.
So your son's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yes, he'd be so funny. He's so funny. He keeps me on my toes for sure.
100%.
So we just have two final questions because we realize we gotta keep talking to you for a very long time, but it is a full night. So
we had 2 books to cover too.
We did.
So,
I know.
Did. Well, these are gonna be, I think, maybe easy. But the first one is, what are you currently reading?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I just started The Summer Pact by Emily Giffin. Oh, it's so good, y'all.
I have that on my Kindle.
So good.
Am I gonna love it?
You're gonna love it. Yeah. So I was the other day I sat down and I was like, I'm just gonna read a couple chapters, and I read 130 pages or something. It's great. It's really good. And I'll tell you what you're gonna love about it too is it is about college friendships that translate over, that continue on into past. So it's really good. Yeah, you're gonna love it.
Oh, good.
That's awesome. Okay, and the final one: coffee or tea?
That's a hard one for me because I really like both. But these days, I'm kind of a coffee girl, which I never thought I would be.
Oh, we thought for sure you were gonna say tea and sweet tea.
No, I've never liked sweet tea.
Really? Okay.
See, okay. Aunt Jan loves it, and it's so sweet.
No. I'm one of the rare Southerners that grew up I think my mom was before her time and being oh, maybe when you add 12 pounds of sugar, it's not good for you. Oh, right. So I just didn't grow up with it. And so, now I'm I mean, I like unsweet tea with maybe a little, I'll be just do a little splash or something, but a full on sweet tea, I can't do it.
Okay. See, coffee wins again.
I know. Coffee always wins. I don't drink coffee. I don't drink coffee. I only drink tea, but not sweet tea. Just
tea.
She's Canadian, so she's got that British influence.
I have to have my Earl Grey tea.
Okay.
And I need a shot of coffee in my veins at all times.
So I have a neighbor who taught me as a little girl to love hot tea. She would have little tea parties for my friends and me and teach us how to make tea the proper way. And so I've always liked hot tea, and so I drink a lot of hot tea, but I like iced coffee now these days. I don't know. I kind of wish I'd never started because I mean I'm pretty advanced in age to just be starting drinking coffee, right? I mean, you think that's something that either you start in college or you don't, and I'm a recent coffee person, so oh well.
Well, I love it. I was just looking to make sure that we answered all of everyone's questions, and I think that we did.
Oh, thanks guys for coming, and thank you for having
Thank
me.
you so
Thank you so
much
much.
for
I hope we
talking
get
with
to talk
us.
about the next one because it sounds fabulous.
Sorry,
too.
I did not do a good job of explaining it, but you know, I'm in that moment of like I'm just finishing the edits, and it's
You
like
did. It
not.
sounds fantastic.
It does. It does.
I mean, I'll read anything you write.
Agreed.
So
Agreed. Agreed. So this one, everyone, it comes out on June 25th.
So everybody go pre-order it.
Yeah.
Pre-order it, and while you're waiting, go back if you haven't had a chance yet and
read
read
The Summer of Songbirds.
Thank you guys.